All right, here we go. Don Lemon. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Glad you stalked me and finally you caught me.
Yes, man. I'm a longtime fan.
Thank you very much.
Longtime fan,
I'm a
man.
fan as well.
You've been doing your thing for quite a while at the highest level.
Thank you. And we have the same haircut because we have the same barber.
We do. Shout out to Yusuf. Small world. Small world. Well, it's your first time here. I want to start at the very beginning. So you were born and raised in Baton Rouge.
Yes.
Shout out to my man Boosie.
Yes.
You're a little older than him?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit, but you guys are both Baton Rouge legends.
Well, that and Master P.
Master P? Oh, he is from Baton Rouge, isn't he?
He lives
originally?
in Baton Rouge. He lives in the country club of Louisiana, not far from my sister.
Okay. So you grew up with both parents.
I did. Well, my dad died when I was 7 years old.
7?
I think it was 7.
Okay.
And then my mom remarried when I was 9. Yes.
Oh, okay, got
it. Yes.
Got it. And your last name
No,
was
you're right.
actually...
Sorry. My dad died in 76 and 77, and I was, you're right.
Yeah, do my research.
Yeah, you did.
Right. And your last name was actually, you were named after your mom's new husband? Or?
I was named after my stepdad, my sister's dad. Yeah, so I'm not, technically, I'm not a lemon. I shouldn't say, genetically I'm not a lemon, but technically I am because it's on my birth certificate.
Got it. And you grew up in a family of all women?
All women.
So your mom and how many sisters?
My mom and 2 sisters. And then my mom remarried and I had a little stepsister.
Aha.
So I was the only boy in the house.
How was that? Do you think that affected you at all?
Did it affect me at all? In which way? What do you mean?
Well, usually you have, families of, both genders. If you have all women, sometimes it affects you a certain type of way.
Well, I always wanted to have like a brother, and I never did. So I was close to my cousins. My one aunt had all boys. She had 4 boys, and 3 of them were my age, a year apart. And with my cousin Kevin, who was my age, and then Ray, Clarence, who was 1 year younger than us, and then, Gerald was 1 year younger than us, and then Ray was a year younger than him. And then years later, she had another son. And so they were like my brothers growing up. And then my mom's sister, my aunt's daughter, was older because my aunt was older than my mom. And her son was my age. So, I had 2 cousins that were exactly my age, and then several other boys and they were basically my brothers.
Got it. Now, you grew up Baptist.
I did. Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
And was your mom like deeply religious?
My mom was a believer, but she wasn't a holy roller.
Okay.
My grandmother was deeply religious. My aunt is more of a holy roller. And but I came from a religious background.
Okay. And as a kid, was that something you really embraced, or were you a little unsure about it?
Both, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I embraced it because I went to a Catholic school, and that's all we did. Everything was about Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, right? And then, so I would go to Catholic school during the week. I'd have catechism. We'd go to Mass every Friday, and if there was some special Catholic holiday, we'd go to Mass then. Mm-hmm. We'd have choir practice in the church. So I was in church a lot, Catholic church a lot during the week. And then I'd go to my Baptist church on Sunday and go to the morning service and go to the evening service. And sometimes in between, you'd have Bible study. And in the summer when you were off, you'd have vacation Bible study. So there was a lot of Jesus, a lot of Bible going on.
A lot of Bible going on.
Yeah.
I feel you. Now, in your new book, I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America, you talked about a situation where as a child, there was an older boy in your neighborhood who was a teenager.
Yeah.
How old were you at the time when this situation happened?
I was probably 6 years old. I was young.
6 years old?
Yeah.
Wow. I thought it was a little
6
bit
years
older.
old, if younger, but yeah.
Okay, and how old was the boy?
In his teens.
Huh.
So, 15, 16, 17, and then older. As I got older, obviously he got older. And not only that, but, he would co-opt his friends or get his friends involved. And they would try stuff with me.
So you were in kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
and you started to get
Mm-hmm.
by this boy. How did the initial situation happen?
God, I can't remember when, but I just remember being alone with him because he was a family friend and he lived next door. I think initially it started when our parents would, they'd have like a house party or get together or just walk over and whatever, and I would be in the room with him. And, things would happen. You'd try things, and I didn't, I was a kid. I didn't really understand it. Or we would be alone. Our parents would be at work, and we'd be running around the town. I grew up in a place where you just kind of ran around. It was in the country, your shoes off, and there were lots of time. This was back in the day when kids would leave the house in the morning and come back in the evening for dinner.
Yeah, in your book you said, an older kid in my neighborhood who was tormenting me in ways I had no words for. He told me not to tell, and I didn't, not until decades later. Even if I'd known how to articulate what was happening, I probably wouldn't have, because I feared the kid like a field mouse fears a wolverine. Yeah, I didn't realize you were that young, 6 years old.
Yeah.
You don't really understand thoughts at all at that age.
No.
And now you have a kid who is almost an adult.
Yeah. Well, to someone who's that young, to me, he was an adult.
Yeah.
And by the time it ended, he was an adult.
So how long does it go on for?
It went on until I write I write in the book before this one about how long it went on for. I write in more detail about the situation. This one in the new book is just sort of a cursory situation, and I write about it in my relationship with God and faith and in my belief. In the book before this one, in This Is the Fire, I write in detail about what happened. I think it was around 12, 13 years old. My mom remarried and we moved to a different neighborhood. And then he took me away from the predator.
Well, you said the abuse stopped after you told him that you'd bite his penis off the next time you do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That stopped.
And it stopped.
Did you tell anybody during that time?
No, I told no one.
Why?
I was scared and ashamed. And, what predators do is they make you think that it's your fault. And when you're a child, you're young, you're, prepubescent or pubescent, your body reacts. If you ask anyone who is even victims of rape as an adult, your body reacts to things even when you don't want it to, right? If someone is touching you.
Yeah, of course.
And so I thought it was my fault in some way as a kid. And I thought he would, I didn't tell because I thought he would tell them that it was my fault, that I was the one who wanted to do it. And so he scared me he threatened me, and so I didn't do it.
Yeah, you said, this doesn't mean I'm gay, he always said, as if being gay was worse than being a predatory sadist who inflicted agony and left an acidic residue of shame. Mm-hmm. I've interviewed a lot of people over the years, and I've interviewed a good number of gay men. The majority of them had a situation similar to this when they were young. Not all. And of course, I've interviewed straight men. For example, I interviewed Carlos Mencia recently, who had two situations like this when he was young, and he's, identifies as a straight man. Do you think that this established your sexuality later in life?
No.
You know what I'm saying, though?
No, I don't. I understand what you're saying, but You're wrong with where you're going. And most people are. Most predators are heterosexual. If you look at the, people who are predatory, it's straight men. And so to think that someone's sexuality can be gained or gotten from an experience with, being is just wrong. The studies show that it's wrong.
Right.
And so I don't think that I became gay because someone me. Just like if a woman had me, I don't think that I would become straight.
The reason why I say it is because it's your introduction to a set of feelings. That although you are being abused.
I didn't want it, regardless, whether it was a man or a woman.
Got it.
It was something that I didn't want. So I don't think it affected my sexuality. I know it didn't affect my sexuality in any way. It's just something that happens to a lot of kids. I'm as we were talking about, as we were taping this, the whole Diddy story is unfolding. Mm-hmm. And there are many, many women who are subscribers who tell me their story, who've been telling me their story. I had a Yanla Manzan on the other day, and she talked about her story of being by a member of her family. And many women are by, men in their families. And so I don't think it's just, gay men who are doing it, and that people become a certain way because of who is. It's just, it's more about power than it is about.
Well, you're going through this, but you're also deep in the church, and the church is telling you that being gay is wrong and so forth. So you're struggling with that whole dichotomy at the time. How was that whole situation like?
Well, it was tough because if in their interpretation of the Bible, it was an abomination. And it's all in the interpretation because depending on which biblical scholar or, who's doing the interpreting, those scriptures can mean different things. So it was a struggle for me because I was in a religious family. I was going to a Catholic school, going to church on Sunday, and people were, back then, this was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Kids didn't talk about that. Kids didn't come out. So you just kept it a secret. But in the place that you were supposed to find solace and redemption, there was no place for me as a kid. Now, I did not realize that as an adult. I can, now sort of figure it out and process it. But back then I couldn't. It was just for me a secret that I prayed that would go away.
Well, you get to high school and you start dating girls,
Mm-hmm.
going to proms and so forth. Did you have sexual relationships with girls during this time?
Yes, I did. And my sexual relationships with girls did not turn me heterosexual.
So was your first voluntary sexual experience, was a man or a woman?
My first voluntary sexual experience was with a woman.
Okay. And did you know at that point that this is not what you're interested in?
Well, again, I tell you, like your body reacts. If you talk to any expert, they'll tell you, any physician, they'll tell you your body reacts. And so I think, when you're a kid and you have all these hormones or whatever going off, and so you can have sex with anybody, right? Meaning a man or a woman, just because. And so, I started to figure out my preference as I grew into my adulthood. I realized that I was not deriving the same pleasure from having sex with a woman than with a man, or being sexually active with a woman or a man.
When did you start having relationships with men?
Not until college.
Okay. And that's where you
Not
actually
until
able to
college.
explore and so forth.
That's when I began to explore. I was in a dorm room, and there was a guy there who we, had a couple of drinks. He's kind of a loner. We would hang out and talk or whatever, and never even thinking about anything. And then one night, I think we hung out and went to a bar, and things progressed, and it was something that I felt shameful after that because I shouldn't be doing this, but I enjoyed the experience while it was happening.
Well, it wasn't until you were 30 years old that you actually told your mom.
That I told my mom, yeah.
Okay, I guess you were going through like a heartache situation.
I had broken up with my boyfriend. I moved to New York. I'd broken up with my boyfriend, and he lived together for a while, and I was heartbroken. It was my first heartbreak. And, besides, childhood crush, I had I had a crush, I had girlfriends in elementary and whatever. And, I was heartbroken.
So you tell your mom,
Yeah.
I'm gay.
Yeah.
And how does she react?
She was quiet. I told her on the phone. I started crying. She was asking me, she's like, what is going on with you? Why you're not the son that, you're not the Don that I'm used to talking to. What is going on with you? And because I was really depressed and sad. And she said, well, what's going on with you? And I said, well, I'm really sad, Mom. And she said, why? And I said, because my relationship is over. And she said, your relationship with who? I said, my relationship with John. And she said, what kind of a relationship? And I said, well, he was my lover. And I started crying and bawling. And she was just really quiet. And she said, I had thought that, and people had, had said that, and there were rumors, and you had never talked to me about it, and I didn't know that it was true. I guess she sort of wished that it wasn't true. And then she said, listen, baby, you're my child. I'm gonna love you, no matter what. So she was really strong in that moment. And then months later, she kind of broke down, and she's like, I guess she was processing it, because I told her not to tell anybody, right? I'm like, Mom, do not tell. Like, let me tell. Mm-hmm. She called my dad. She's like, she called me back and said, look, I was telling your dad. And I'm like, Mom, I told you not to tell him. She goes, look, I don't care. I told your dad, and he said, this has been happening forever. And he said he knew already. And I was like, well, of course he did. He's, because my stepdad was a man of the world. He was 23 years my mom senior, I think. So, my dad knew. And then my sisters knew, but the confirmation really upset one of my sisters. And it was the exact opposite of what I thought. I thought the one sister would be more accepting, and the other one would be like, I can't believe this. But yeah.
I mean, how did it feel to finally let that out to your family?
It was a relief, and I was worried that back then that my family would judge me or wouldn't love me or would ostracize me, and my family meant everything to me then. So there are lots of stories, I'm sure, that you've heard about families who just sort of, cast their family member aside and ostracize them because they turned out to be gay or trans or whatever it is. And it's horrible. And that was my deepest fear. But I got to tell you, in that moment, and when my mom said she was okay and she loved me, nothing else really mattered in the world. I was fearless then. Nothing else. I wasn't afraid of anything after that.
Dope.
Yeah.
Dope. You graduate high school and you go to Louisiana State University. You want to do journalism at the time?
I wanted to do journalism at the time, but I thought that, well, here's the thing. I wanted to be like my dad. My dad was an attorney. And so I thought I would do, I would study economics or do some pre-law thing, because I was trying to be like my dad, And, but there was this woman who I had seen on television and who looked like my family. She sounded like my family. And when I was growing up, the only role models, the only people on television were, JJ from Good Times and those kinds of things, right? Those kinds of characters. And good for them, right? They were doing what they had to do in the moment, those roles or whatever. But the folks who were like my family, there were few and far between, if any.
Yep.
And so when I saw this woman on television, her name was Jean West. And she looked great, because my mom would dress to the nines. She's dressed to the nines. She's this beautiful black woman. Her hair was done, and she was just owning it, right? She was owning it. I'm like, wow, this woman was great. And she wasn't there very long, because she moved on and moved to a better position. And I said, wow, you know what? I want to do that. And I changed from, studying economics, which I was horrible at numbers. I don't know why I did it. And then I started taking journalism classes, and which was natural because my parents had this big Panasonic VHS camera that I used to carry around and pretend that I was a news reporter, and I would do shows in my den, in the family den. And it's funny because we would do sort of disc shows, right? One of my friends is Mark Ray, who's no longer with us. He's a really funny guy, and my friends and I put together this show called The Mark Ray is a Dick Show for his birthday. And we, put it together, and for his birthday, we played it, and it was all the things that we pretend that we hated about Mark Ray, but we actually loved it. We would I'd follow him around campus, LSU, with the camera, and we had a badminton class together, or we'd go to his house and we would tape him surreptitiously, because my other friend Mike had a camera, and I just sort of edited it and put it together, and we created this show called The Mark Ray is a Dick Show. Or I would do newscasts in my den. And so by the time I started taking doing the journalism, it just came really, really easy to me.
Well, right, because you ended up going to Brooklyn College.
Yeah. Well, I ended up leaving LSU because my journalism professor told me I would make it.
Right.
Because I had a hard time editing videotape. I've never had to edit videotape in my life, right? It was always an editor, someone who could do it better than me. And so he said, but he was always really nice to the blonde girls or the dark-haired, like Southern Belle beauty queens, but he was never really nice to me. And even though my performance was better, I could, on camera, I was better than them. My writing was good. I believe I'm an excellent writer, if I must say so myself. But he would never give me credit for any of that. He wouldn't give me any shine. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I said, and then he said, I remember when I went to turn in for one of the exams, we were in this sort of editing suites, and he said, you're just not gonna, you should do something more suited to what you should do. And I looked at him like, what? I'm like, these people, have you seen this girl that you are like kissing up to every day and who's in your office? She's not great.
Yeah.
I left.
Yeah. Look what ultimately happened.
Yeah, I left. And I moved to New York with, I know it's the whole, it sounds like a cliche story. $200 in my pocket, all of the belongings that I could fit in my 1987 Jeep Wrangler. And I moved in with a friend in Jersey City, stayed with them for a while, took a job at Macy's for holiday relief, Herald Square, and then eventually moved into a sublet apartment, the back room of someone's apartment. I forgot the guy's name, in Astoria, Queens. Then I met my boyfriend, and we moved into an apartment in Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn. We lived together for a while, and we broke up, and that's when I told my mom.
Okay, so you graduated from Brooklyn College with a major in broadcast journalism.
Yeah.
And then you started getting jobs.
Yes.
You were a news anchor for WBRC in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yep.
WCAU in Philadelphia.
Yep.
Some Fox affiliates in St. Louis. Then you were in New York.
They were all Fox affiliates.
So these were all, so you were just jumping around.
So I took a job at, I was trying to make ends meet. It was tough back then because I didn't have my degree, and people were telling me that you don't need your degree in this business, whatever. And I took a job, but the first job I took was at Channel 5 on the Upper East Side, WMYW, as a trainee in the newsroom, $5 an hour. and so that was like a 6-month traineeship, how to be in news, what to do in a newsroom. It sort of trained you. And so that was a 6-month gig. And then I was so good that they hired me as a freelance production assistant. And so I went from $5 an hour to like, $6 or $7, and I thought I was rich, right? But I still could barely afford my $300 and whatever dollar apartment sublet. And so, it was freelance. So I didn't get to work all the time, right? So I really struggled. So I took a job as an office manager for a sign company called Jewel Light. I don't think it's there anymore. And I remember one day I was in the front of office or whatever of this sign, and this was down near the World Trade Center, and the sun hit it like the shadow across the sign, and I read it, and it said Jew Elite. And I turned to the owner and I said, that sign says Jew Elite? And he said, yeah.
I meant it that way.
I meant it that way. And I was like, okay, I get it. But then eventually I started getting enough hours at Channel 5, and so I got to leave my job as an office manager, which I hated anyways. And I started working I became from a trainee to a production assistant to a desk assistant to an assignment editor, satellite feeds coordinator, field producer, writer. I could do every single job in the newsroom by the time. And I was working either part-time or full. I mean, I was going to school either part-time or full-time, depending on my schedule at work.
By 2002, you won a Edward R. Murrow Award for coverage around the DC sniper.
The snipers, yeah.
I remember when that happened and they actually released a picture of him. like everyone was shocked that he was black. It seemed like this was like a white thing to do.
Yeah. But do you remember that time?
I do.
It was, by that time I had gotten to the network. I was at NBC News by that time. I had gone from, New York WNYW to Birmingham, Alabama, to St. Louis, to Philadelphia. And it was my first network gig at NBC News. And I was doing reports for NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. And I just remember, I would file my reports. And so it was kind of in a silo, so it wasn't a big deal. But the night that they caught the snipers, it was a huge special show. This is NBC News special coverage, Tom Brokaw. And I was one of the correspondents that had to cover it live. And I had never been live with Tom. Maybe, I don't know if I had never been live with Tom. I had reports in the show, but I'd never been live with him. And so, he's like, and now the snipers, let's go to Don Lemon. And I'm like, oh, my heart is going. And I go, good evening, Tom, blah, 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 toss to my story. And then I come out, blah, 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 back to you, Tom. He asks a question. I answer the question. And then that was it. And I thought I was going to pass out because, my mom was like, I just saw you on the nightly news. Oh, it was great. But that was a big deal. And we won, an Edward R. Murrow for that.
And then you started working for WMAQ TV in Chicago and you won 3 Emmys.
Yes. But I left NBC News because WMAQ wanted, their anchor had cancer. And they needed someone, they needed a number 2 and someone who would eventually take over for the anchor, for the main anchor. So they asked me to come. I'm like, I got this network gig. And they're like, we'll make it worth your while. So I left NBC News and went to WMAQ in Chicago and started working there as the 5 o'clock anchor. And, with the intent from the station that I was going to eventually become the main anchor there. But Warner, his name was Warner Saunders, a great guy. I think Warner's gone now, he's passed. But Warner wasn't going anywhere. So it's like after 3 years, I'm like, Warner's not going anywhere. Why am I still sitting here? And so I left.
Right. Then by 2006, you joined CNN.
Yes.
Is this what you had been aiming for the whole time?
Yes, I had been aiming for. I mean, look, I had my cushy gig at NBC News. And the thing what they said, if it doesn't work out in Chicago, you can come back to NBC News. But then that's when they started downsizing, right? And NBC News was going through, I think GE, they had sold it to whatever, maybe GE or Comcast, I forget. So they were having issues and I was just like, I'm not going to go back and deal with that. I'll just go work for CNN. And so I went to work for CNN, but it was never my ambition to go to work for CNN. As a matter of fact, when I was coming up, if you were in broadcast, like if you were at a network, people at the network looked down their nose at people who were in cable. They just thought the people in cable were second fiddle, and they were like, "Oh, you're
right." Because the regular channels had a bigger audience.
They had a bigger audience, but then eventually, over time,
it went the other way.
It went the other way. Not necessarily a bigger audience, but cable became more relevant. All the conversations were happening on cable. People could tune in all day long, and especially when I was in, eventually got to prime time, that's where everybody started watching because they were like, well, I don't know what Don Lemon's going to say tonight. Let me tune in, So, but not just the relevance, not just through me, but this is Barack Obama, and this was George Bush. It was the war. It was Donald Trump came along and all that. So people just started having those conversations on cable, and cable became much more relevant than broadcast news at that time.
Well, you're at CNN and you're working your way up the system there. And then in 2011, you publicly came out as gay. Mm-hmm. Now, you'd already told your family and friends about it, but now you publicly came out. Was it on the air or?
Well, kind of on the air. Two things. So I came out in several ways. And I don't mean came out as gay. I came out as a victim or a survivor of sexual abuse. I just unwittingly, I don't know what happened, but I just said it on the air. There was, why can't I remember his name? But there was a pastor down in Atlanta who had been accused of sexually abusing some of the members of his flock. And I can't remember his name. But anyways, it'll come to me. And then I had some of the members of his congregation on the air to talk about it. And I'm having a conversation, and this is when I was a weekend anchor, and they're talking to me, and they go, "Oh, Bishop," it was Bishop somebody, and they said, Bishop is not this, he's not that, he doesn't, you never would have thought. And I said, people don't wear M on their forehead or on their chest for a molester or an A for abuser. I said, and it's usually the person you least expect. And I said, I know from experience because it happened to me. And in that moment, the three members I was talking to started, they were like, and they just got quiet. And I'm like, well, what is the big deal? And then the show ended, and then my boss called, and then another boss called, and then my mom called, and she's like, I almost fell out of my chair, and because I hadn't told her. And she said, I couldn't believe it, and yeah. And so that I came out with that, and that was empowering. Some people were, concerned at the network about why I did it, and they were just really nervous about it. I'm like, why are you so nervous? It's real. And so I think that's when I started gaining, I think, some autonomy, and I became more self-possessed about who I was and the power that I had and the influence that I could have in this platform just by being honest and getting people and discussing things that people did not discuss and were afraid to discuss. And that's what the medium, I believe, should be used for, because so many people were keeping those secrets, and it was unhealthy. And as long as you kept that, as long as we were keeping those secrets, that would allow for more people to be abused. And so I realized that in that moment. And I thought that, oh my God, I'm in trouble. People aren't gonna, but the outpouring and the support I got was overwhelming. So after that, someone approached me, a publisher, and said, I think you have a book in you. You should write a book. Well, would you do it? And we'll help you, whatever. And we'll just, we'll split the royalties, blah, blah, blah. We'll do all that. And I was like, I didn't know. I'm like, okay, fine. So I wrote a book about my story, my journeys in journalism, and my travails and journeys in journalism. And I got to the point in the book, because it was, a memoir about my life, about why I moved to New York. And I moved to New York to escape racism and the homophobia of Louisiana and to be myself. And I said, I have to have the same rules for me as I have for everybody else on the air. And so if I'm going to write it, then I have to be honest. And I said, I moved to New York to come out because I was gay and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it was only like a page or two in this book. And I struggled with it. I was so afraid. I'm like, I'm going to lose my livelihood, but I'm going to do it. I got to do it. And the New York Times wrote about it, and then boom, that was it.
I mean, were you the first person in the national media space to come out as gay?
Rachel Maddow was on the air, but she did not have the success that she has now. She did not have the profile that she had.
Right. She's a woman, though.
She's a woman.
So there's a slightly different stigma.
Yes, you're right about that. And then I don't know if you remember Thomas Roberts. Thomas Roberts worked for HLN, Headline News. He was an anchor there, and Thomas came out. And, Thomas is a white guy, slightly different for a black man, as you know, even more of a stigma. And I think that was it. And so there was no one else out. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll just go do something else.
And the sun still rose the next day. Life went on.
I know. Look, it's easy to say that, especially now, if you're looking at it through the modern lens, a 2024, 2023, 2024, 2025 lens. Mm-hmm. It's easy to say the sun came up and it's, right, you can make light of it. But in 2011, it was serious shit, and it was scary, and there was nobody else. There was no roadmap for me.
Yeah.
There were no other pioneers. I mentioned Thomas. Thomas had a different profile than I did. He worked for HLN, whatever, which was a different sort of thing. I worked for the mothership and was one of their, premier anchors. And in a very rarefied place, like the higher you get, right, the air gets thinner. And so I was up there, and I'm like, here I am at this perch, and I'm going to come out, and I don't know what people are going to say. I'm going to lose my livelihood. I'm going to get a lot of criticism, but I have to be honest with myself if I'm going to be a real journalist and a real person. And so I did it, but it was scary. And, I feel like I helped some folks.
Yeah, I'm sure you were viewed as a hero in your community.
A hero to some,
Yeah.
And, to others, it was like, why did he have to do that? Why does he have to tell personal business and nobody cares about who he sleeps with? And I'm like, this is not about who I sleep with.
Right.
It was scary, yes.
Well, around this time, around 2012, you said you had a situation with Jonah Hill when you met him, and you said that he was extremely rude and treated you like the help.
Well, I didn't say I had a situation with him. I just remember being nice to him, and he was rude. That's it. And treated me like the help. Like, you treat people at whatever, but, that's so old. And, I think I've seen Jonah since then, and it's totally fine. But that's like old news. But that didn't mean anything racial about that. That was nothing about race.
Okay.
That had nothing to do. I think the movie The Help was out then.
Right.
Yeah, but that was the beginnings of like Twitter and, and people made it out to be more than it was. I don't really care. Jonah's, I'm sure, a good guy or whatever, but that's got from like, what,
2012. Yeah.
Yeah, old news.
12 years ago. Okay, so you're at CNN and you start to work your way up the ladder to the point where you get your own show, The 11th Hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first it was the Don Lemon show. They tried that for something. I believe it was a Don Lemon show. And then it was the 11th Hour. It's the original 11th Hour, because now there's an 11th Hour on MSNBC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. But now you have your own show.
Yes.
How did that feel to actually get to that point?
Well, that was good. That was a pilot. So they were piloting a show called the 11th Hour that I came on at 11. And I think after me was a show, I forget what it was. It was Sonny Hostin, who's now a co-host of The View, and Mark Garagos, the famed attorney. And so I would do the 11th Hour for 30 minutes. This was the plan. This was a pilot that they wanted. And then Sonny and Mark would do their legal show after that. And almost as soon as that happened, MH370 happened, the plane. So I think I got one episode of that show, maybe two, I can't remember, and then it was over.
Okay. During this time, you had some interesting interviews.
Yeah.
You interviewed Mike Tyson.
Yes, but listen, you're missing a whole part of the story.
Okay.
That show was over, and the 11th Hour was over because of the plane. And so nobody wanted to cover the plane. They thought they were too good for the plane.
This is the Malaysia flight.
This is a Malaysia flight. They thought they were too good for the plane. And I was like, I'll cover it. Now, if I hadn't said I'll cover it, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. You wouldn't care, because I would be some also ran, doing whatever. So I said, I'll cover it. And then I covered it, and I went into it, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. If you want me to cover this plane, I'm going to cover this plane. And so MH370 happened. Mm-hmm. And after, that wound down, I saw my boss, Jeff Zucker, in the elevator. We were riding between, I think it was like 2 floors, like maybe 5 to 7. And I said, I know the plane thing is over. I said, but you know what? We can make this show work without the plane. And he goes, sure. He goes, what are you going to do? I'm like, I said, we'll just talk about the big stories of the day, the water cooler stories, and that's it. We'll just dig deep into them. But this show can work without the plane.
Okay.
He said, okay.
That was the Don Lemon show?
That was CNN Tonight, which eventually became CNN Tonight with Don Lemon, which eventually became Don Lemon Tonight.
You had some interesting interviews around this time. One of them was Mike Tyson.
Yes.
You said you were full of shit.
Yes, but that was joking. Jokingly, yeah. Mike and I know Mike. He's a good guy. He's fun.
Yeah, I had a Mike Tyson interview that started to go left.
Really?
At one point. Yeah. Zab Judah, the boxer, was doing the primary interview, and I was there, kind of supervising it. But I'm like, hey, do you mind if I come and ask a few questions? So a couple questions in, I said, Mike, at the time you were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You're hanging out with these street guys. What attracted you to these street guys? And Mike said, what do you mean attracted? And I said, oh, Mike just thought I asked him if he was gay. Like, I think that's how he took it.
You were asking him?
No, you know what I'm saying? I meant hanging out. I'm like, no, well, you're friends with them.
I know you meant by attracted. Why would you want to hang out with them?
Yeah, exactly. But he's like, what do you mean attracted? So now I'm like, and I'm actually in a boxing ring with him. I'm at his gym doing the interview, and like my security's way over there. I'm like, if Mike lunges at me, my security's not going to make it in time.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, I have to talk my way out of this situation with an annoyed Mike Tyson. And ultimately,
Yeah.
he understood what I was saying.
Yeah.
But Tyson always likes to mess with people.
It's kind of like the what is it? The influencer who interviewed the woman and said, "You're a musician." She goes, "I'm not a musician." She goes, "You make music, right?" She's like, "But I'm not a musician."
Yeah.
But that just shows you kind of how we, like, the homophobia, right?
Yeah.
How it,
I didn't mean it like that. Honestly,
Yes.
I really didn't. I didn't.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson's straight. I'm sure of this. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Not that there's anything wrong with being gay. I was like, you're hanging out with these guys because he was cool with like a bunch of these guys, like Eric Von Zip, infamous street figures.
Yeah.
Homo, who 50 Cent thought had shot him. Like there's a lot of street ties with Mike Tyson. So, but yeah, he took it a certain type of way and looked like he was starting to get angry with
and
me.
you were scared.
I was definitely scared. Wouldn't you be scared?
Yeah, I had a scary moment with him. Scary moment was not the Don Lemon's full of shit. He was actually like, fake boxing with me, and like grabbing me around the neck or whatever. And I'm like, he could break my neck and kill me right now.
Right.
In that same interview. So I'm like, Mike Tyson, because Mike is a little erratic, right?
Yeah.
But he's actually a big softy, right?
He's a nice guy.
But he can hurt you.
Yeah.
Right?
He's still Mike Tyson.
He's still Mike Tyson. So that was the scary part for me. But I had a similar situation as you, to just talk about the homophobia. This was one of my former coworkers at CNN. I saw her husband somewhere, and I'd never met him before. And I said, "Hey," "you're my friend's guy." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You're my friend." I said, "Aren't you married to such and such?" And he goes, "Oh, I thought you were talking about some gay shit." And I'm like, "No, you're married to my coworker who is my friend." And it's so weird how people go there and how nervous they are. But usually that tells you something about someone. When someone is that homophobic,
Yeah.
that sensitive,
Yeah.
something's up.
Something's up.
Because most of the friends I know who are completely, at ease with their sexuality, have no issues.
Yeah, I've never had an issue about
Yeah.
being gay, straight, whatever. I'm
But it would be a little
comfortable
scary
with
with Mike Tyson.
It would be scary. It was scary with Mike Tyson. Well, you had an interview with one of Bill Cosby's accusers.
Yeah.
And she said that Cosby forced her to perform oral sex.
Yeah.
And you said there are ways not to perform oral sex if you don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And people criticized you for that line of questioning.
Yeah, but they didn't understand the backstory.
Were you talking about your childhood?
Because we were friends. We had developed a relationship and a friendship. And when I'm on the set, when I'm talking to people, it's just there's no difference to me talking, on television than in person. And I said there are ways. And then she looked at me. She goes, "I never thought about that." But Joni and I are friends. And I said, and when I explained it to people, like, that's how I got my accuser to, and they were like, and I said, but it may be different for a woman because there's a power dynamic and a strength dynamic and whatever. I totally understand that, but I meant no harm. We were just having a conversation. And by no means, as you know, as a survivor, by no means am I making an excuse for what happened. We're having a conversation. Everybody calm down and relax. She laughed about it. We don't even talk about it to this day because it's over. But, people get offended for other people for no reason.
You talked about earlier how when you were growing up, when you look at Black images on TV, you have like JJ on Good Times, who is like a caricature of the culture. But
in Good Times, a family that could never make it. Nothing good ever happened to that family.
James Sr. ended up
James
dying. Yeah.
Whatchamacallit, Thelma gets married to this basketball player. He's about to go off, and then he trips or somebody, and then he breaks his ankle or whatever happens, and then he loses that. And it's like, can this family ever get a break?
Right. Well, the actor who played James Jr. was like threatening the cast because they kept. Do you know about this story?
No.
What's his actual name? I don't want to keep calling him James Jr.
The one who
he was also in Roots. He played the father in Coming to America.
You mean James Sr.
James Sr., I meant, yeah.
Yeah, you mean James Sr.
James Sr.
The dad, yeah.
The dad.
I know the story that he did not like the storyline. He thought it was,
they weren't focusing on, his son going to college and stuff like that. It was it was like put on the chicken suit and say dynamite.
Right.
He literally threatened the writers to the point where they're like, okay, we got to kill
That's
this
why they
guy.
wrote him out of the. That's why he died on the show.
That's why he died on the show.
Yeah.
Exactly. But after that came the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
And the Cosby Show showed a whole different light on, to middle class and upper class black families, as well as a different world and everything else like that. So you have this ultra powerful force in the black community with Bill Cosby, who ultimately ends up being a rapist, and, tying it into the whole thing of, interviewing one of his survivors. How do you feel was the effect of that when ultimately Bill Cosby had one of the greatest falls from graces, I think, ever?
Well, two things. Bill Cosby and The Cosby Show in a Different World, that was my life. That was the first time, because I grew up in within the shadow of an HBCU, Southern University in Baton Rouge. And so my neighborhood was it was a product of the talented 10th. These were people who were engineers and professors and doctors, and, they had lawns with sprinklers and whatever. And they, everybody had a Cadillac or something like that, a Lincoln Continental in their driveway. And so that was growing up. That was my growing up. My dad, my real dad was an attorney. So that was the kind of life that we had, but you did not see that on television.
Right.
So when Cosby did that, obviously it was groundbreaking. We're like, thank you, Bill Cosby. This is, fantastic. We're seeing this. We're learning about fraternities and sororities and, HBCUs, and it was just fantastic. And then, years later, as you said, Bill Cosby has this huge fall from grace. And it is not at all that different from Diddy.
Oh, yeah, very similar, actually.
It's very similar. And I mean, Diddy is not, it's not seen to be as, sort of
wholesome,
intellectual. No, it's not. Cosby was an intellectual.
True.
He highlighted education in college and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And it was sort of a black elite.
Yes.
Diddy was like hip hop culture. He was more grounded and rooted to the culture and to the streets. Mm-hmm. But he became a mogul and, made $1 billion, right? And then, so it is a fall from grace, but it's not, it's not that different. It was a shock to the system. It was a shock to the system.
Yeah.
But I can't say that. What I will say, it's interesting now that he was let out, right? That Cosby's out. Cosby went to jail.
Yeah, and it was reversed.
And it was reversed.
For a good reason, honestly.
Look, I don't know about that.
When it comes to the law, yeah.
If you're...
He should have been prosecuted when he was already given a deal.
Okay.
I'm not talking about morally, I'm talking about legally.
Right. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's interesting did not get much coverage.
When he got released?
When he got released, it wasn't a big deal.
Well,
now, when he went to jail...
You know how the news works, man.
But
people don't want to hear about the cleanup. They want to hear about the wreck.
But remember he went to jail? It was a helicopter shot of him at the house and Camille hugging in the driveway and whatever. And then all of a sudden when he got out, it was just like, okay, it's been reversed and he's out.
Well, at one point, after Cosby's son was killed, he made a lot of comments about black culture, about pulling up your pants and stuff like that. And you actually had some similar comments at one point. You told black people they should pull up their pants, stop using the N-word, stop littering. You said, I've lived in several predominantly white neighborhoods in my life. I rarely ever witnessed people littering. Mm-hmm. But, if you go to, trailer parks, they're littering there as well.
I've never lived in a trailer park.
Okay, but I'm saying if you drive past one, it's not going to be the cleanest place in the world.
Oh yeah, but I mean but people don't judge white society and white people on trailer parks.
Okay,
right,
fair enough.
People tend to judge African Americans by the worst of behaviors, right?
But I mean, to me, it's an economic thing. If you go to a rich black neighborhood, it's going to be clean. If you go to a poor neighborhood of any race, it's going to be dirty.
Yeah, but I'm speaking for my people.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'm speaking to my people, and that was people, say, well, why did you say that? I said that because that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I don't think that, and I still don't think that people should be walking around with their pants below their asses, below their underwear. I just don't think that is a good I don't think that is that's good for anyone. White, black, anyone. Justin Bieber can get away with that because he's white. Maybe Justin Timberlake or any of those people who, sort of co-opt black culture, they can get away with it. But black folks can't get away with it. And what I'm trying to do is help to uplift my people rather than, have them do something that I think is degrading. And I know what people are thinking about that, but it's just not, I don't want to see anybody's underwear or their ass or their sweaty butthole when I'm walking down the street. You can, it's gross.
I heard that actually came from jail culture.
Yeah, it did.
What it meant was, hey, this is open for business right here. Let me show you what I'm working with.
Yeah, so people can criticize me for that for all they want. Hey, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel about it. And I think that you should, but the thing is like when I said you should litter, what I told people is to respect where they live. Yeah. And I was giving an example of something that I thought is a way of respecting where you live, right? Because when I want my house to be clean.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a house that's trash. I want my house to be inviting to come home. I want my property values to be high. I want people who live, no matter where you live, I lived in Harlem at the time, no matter where you live, I want it to be a good place to live for the kids so that the kids who will emulate your actions when they become adults, that they understand that, hey, I should protect my neighborhood. I should live in a good neighborhood. There's nothing that says that because I was raised in poverty, that I have to constantly live in poverty and I have to live with an impoverished mind.
You also said to finish school, stop telling kids that they're acting white because they go to school or they speak proper English. And just because you can have a baby doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I
finished school. I went to UC Berkeley. I mean, yeah.
I don't understand why people got upset about that because I still think that just because you have a child, you shouldn't. I mean, look at what's happening now with kids.
Yeah.
And that goes for all ethnicities. That's not just black folks.
Well, Trump gets elected. And then in 2017, you interviewed Caitlyn Jenner about Trump.
I did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And you said this. You said, talking with Caitlyn Jenner, I see a woman standing in front of me. I have no problem with her living her best life as a woman. But her politics are the unmistakable artifact of a privilege known only to wealthy white men in this country. She didn't start out as a female athlete in a system tooled for the support of male athletes. She competed as a man in a man's world, getting all the support, publicity, and endorsement deals largely unavailable to women at that time. Now, as a woman, she's advocating for candidates trying to roll back reproductive rights for a woman born with a uterus. And I do have a problem with that.
Yeah, I do. Because she's a woman. That's what she says. Okay, fine. But she's acting like a privileged white man. And she still has the mind of a privileged white man. And for her to talk about reproductive rights, and I'm a conservative, and women should not be able to get an abortion, shouldn't be allowed to do certain things. I don't know one law, now correct me if I'm wrong, that tells a man what they can do with their bodies. And so she is, right, from that experience, where she can do basically whatever she wants to her body. And I'm not sure if she's transitioned or not. But if she
even if she transitions, she can't have a baby, so it doesn't matter.
But yes, it doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is, as a man who transitioned to a woman, he had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to do what? Whatever he wanted to with his body to become a she.
Yeah.
So why should she now be telling a woman what she can do with her body? It doesn't make sense.
I've always been pro-choice.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid.
Yeah. But do you understand what I'm saying?
I completely understand what you're saying.
Make sense.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense.
What if someone had told her, you can't do that?
Yeah, you can't be trans.
You can't transition.
And a woman telling you that.
You can't have the surgery.
Yeah. You got to keep your Adam's apple.
I'm just saying, if you don't see the hypocrisy in that, then I don't know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Trump made a comment at one point where he referred to Haiti, El Salvador, Honduras as shitholes. And you got on CNN and said the president of the United States is a racist. A lot of us already knew that.
Are you saying a lot of us already knew that, or I said that?
No, you said that.
Yeah.
You said that. Those are your words. Now, of course, people are saying this and so forth. but you got on a huge platform and said it point blank. What was the response when you said that?
Oh my gosh, you should have seen the studio. So I'm in the studio and I'm doing it, and you could hear like, whoa. And, but to me, it wasn't a big deal because before that, I had said, can we just stop saying that he's out of context and he has an issue with the truth, or he embellished this, or his facts are wrong. I said, can't we just say the man is lying? Like, why are we doing this? Well, he's the president. I'm like, but he's lying. And so I actually said, finally, he's a liar. He's lying. And people were like, right? And so then by the time I got around to that, I was like, well, a lot of us knew it. And I said, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say he's lying, and I'm going to show why a lie is a lie. And I would give the evidence. So I'm going to say, I told the producers, that he's racist, and then I'm going to give you the evidence why he's racist. And so if you say something is a shithole, if you tell NBA players, if you want to call them sons of bitches, you want to say my African American, if you're going to be sued from the Justice Department for not allowing blacks to live in your buildings, and on and on and on, that's racist.
Yeah.
That's the evidence. End of story. But it was a huge uproar, and people were mad, but my boss said, you're right. So let them be mad. Next, what's on your show tonight?
Well, yeah, speaking of Haiti, recently in the debate with Kamala, he claimed that Haitians were eating cats and dogs in Ohio.
I said what I said. And you know how we say, I tried to tell y'all. Because he's now, same thing about Haiti. He called Haiti a shithole country, and now he's saying Haitians are a huge problem, that cats and dogs, they're talking about the Venezuelans and all of that. They're eating, Asians are eating, what do you say, cats and dogs and ducks. Yeah, he said, and geese or whatever.
Right, the geese.
But I love that J.D. Vance calls them Haitians.
What do you mean?
He calls, no, not Haitians. He says they're from Haïtia.
From Haïtia?
People from Haïtia? I'm like, no, where is Haïtia? Where the hell is Haïtia?
Where's Haïtia?
Do you think he's racist?
Yeah, I think he's racist.
Okay. Do you think he's racist?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's interesting also is that when he first started his presidency, any black person standing next to him was extremely ostracized. Remember Steve Harvey had the whole backlash, and Kanye took a lot of heat for wearing MAGA hats and so forth. 2024, you see lots of rappers and everything embracing him, standing next to him, the whole nine. And
like
it doesn't. Well, of course, there's the
like
people.
Anybody that means anything.
Well, Kodak Black means something.
Okay.
He's got a huge audience.
All right.
You may not.
What is it? Isn't Sexy Red like one of the?
Yeah, Sexy Red co-signed him.
Yeah.
These are not the quote unquote intellectual rappers, but they have huge followings. You can't just, scratch them off the list like that.
Yeah. In a way, I'm not surprised though. There is, and let me just preface this by saying people can vote for whoever they want to vote for. This is America, right? So if you want to vote against your own interests, then by all means do it. But you should be armed with the facts when you do that about who the person is. But it's not surprising to me considering the nature of some, not all, rap and hip hop. It's aspirational. He's flying on a plane and gold toilets. I'm living in a high rise. You live in the clouds, that sort of thing. So I think it's aspirational to some people, some rappers and some men of color.
There's a bunch of them. I actually looked up a list. 42 Doug, OT7 Kwani, who he did the appearance with in Philadelphia, Chef G and Hollow and Sleepy Hollow, who when he came to the Bronx.
You're immersed in rap and hip hop. I have no idea who that is.
Of course, Waka Flocka, Lil Wayne, who he pardoned.
Yeah.
He's pardoning someone will probably get you their support.
It's a lot of it's transactional.
Exactly.
Usually most people are transactional.
Yeah. Well,
but it's good for those guys who are standing next to him, but does that mean they're voting for them?
I don't even know if they're voting.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. But, their fan bases are going to be affected, but do their fan bases vote? Who knows?
Yeah, but again, you can vote for whoever you want to vote for, but just know who you're voting for. I think that you should, and my mission is to inform people, to make sure they understand what they're doing, what the issues are when they go to the polls.
In 2019, the whole Jussie Smollett thing started to happen. And it was revealed in court testimony the U.S. sent him messages saying that Chicago police didn't believe his account of what happened. Is that accurate?
No, that's not right. That's what Jussie Smollett said.
Oh.
Right. That's what Jussie Smollett said in court, but is any of that true? Here's the thing, I'm so glad that you asked me that question because I've been wanting to correct this.
Let's go.
I've never believed Jussie Smollett.
Me neither.
Okay, so let me tell you. So I'm going to tell you the story just so that people know, right? This is probably going to be the most viral part of your thing, right?
Let's go.
Did I know Jussie Smollett? Yes. I met Jussie Smollett on the set of Empire. Lee Daniels called and asked me to do a cameo, and I met him. And then when I lived in Harlem, some of his friends lived in my building, so I got to know him. We were never best friends or anything like that. So I was living in a hotel because there was one of the HVAC systems in my apartment broke, and I had to have the floors redone. It flooded, and all the floors buckled, and so we had to move out. So I'm living in a hotel, and my phone. So we're in close quarters, and I'm in. My fiance's there, and our 2 dogs are there. So it's like we're living in this one room. And then the phone rings, like really early in the morning, and I'm like, and I usually didn't answer, and I look and I saw the name on the phone. It wasn't Jussie Smollett, but it was someone who knew him, and he said, "Hey Don, Jussie something." I'm paraphrasing here. Jussie was racially profiled or something, and I'm here with him at the hospital. And I was like, "For what? Like, what happened?" And he starts telling me the story, and he goes through it, and I said, "Is he okay? Is he there?" And I said, whatever, put him on the phone. I said, "Oh, well, man, you take care of yourself. I don't know what's going on." And, and so Tim is next to me, and he can hear it because I have the phone on speaker. And I put the phone down, and, back on the nightstand, and I looked at Tim, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, that smell bullshit. And I said, "Yeah." It was like, it's 10 degrees outside or whatever it is in Chicago.
Yeah.
And someone in Chicago wearing a MAGA hat, they're going to recognize Jussie Smollett from Empire.
Yeah.
Now, if they had said, all those things, if they had said Don Lemon, that would be a different story, because that's when I was getting threats from the MAGA people. They knew who. But the chances of someone who is in MAGA watching Empire and recognizing Jussie Smollett on a 10-degree night in Chicago.
Right. Yeah. For me,
who happened to be carrying a noose. Okay, so I'm just saying, look, and I'm not trying to disparage Jussie, whatever. I wish him well. Seriously, I don't mean this, but I never believed it. And so when people are saying that I'm passing messages to him, nobody believed him. No one believed him. For me to say, Jussie, the Chicago police don't believe you, was no breaking news. So I'm trying to get an interview with him because he had gone on Good Morning America with Robin Roberts, and he did that interview, and people were like, "I don't believe him."
Yeah.
And so I worked in Chicago. I had sources in the police department, and I asked them, but this is after the police department, they were giving press conferences about him. People in the news were saying, "We don't believe him." The Chicago media was saying the story was fishy and that cops didn't believe him. So for me to text him and say, "Hey, Jussie, cops don't believe you. Nobody believes you. If you really think that you are innocent, you want to tell your story, come on my show and tell your story." If you weren't doing that as a journalist, you were not doing your job. So the fact that I'm texting him, asking him to come on my show, I'm doing committing an act of journalism.
Right.
Come on the show. Nobody believes you. Tell your story. So for him in court to say, "I don't want to turn over my phone because there were messages from Don saying the cops don't believe you." Come on.
Yeah.
Come on now. Now that for the right-wing media, that was like, oh my gosh. But members of the right-wing media, if they had Jussie Smollett's number, they were calling him saying, come on the show.
Right.
So,
yeah, look, I interviewed the two Nigerian brothers who were, involved in that little fiasco. And, they said it was all BS, and they said how it all came together.
But go back and look at the reporting that I did.
No,
if you go back, I'm like,
Look.
Did you look at the reporting?
I did not.
I'm like, Jussie, I'm just,
Look.
And he was mad at me. And his some of the other actors on the show were mad at me because they thought like I had turned against Jussie, but I'm like, no, I didn't turn against him. Let me explain to you what happened. This story is unbelievable.
Look, early on, he was having a hell of a run with it. I remember he was on stage. He called himself the gay Tupac. Remember that?
I don't know about all that.
No, he did it. There's a video. There's a video of it.
Yeah,
he goes, I fought back. Yeah. I'm the gay Tupac. But then, let me just tell you this. But then when the videos started coming out and they showed the police showing up to his house and he still had the noose around his neck in his apartment, I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. This is all BS. There's no if you were attacked and someone tried to put a noose around your neck, you would just keep it on? You just rock around with it like a chain?
Look, I don't want to keep disparaging. I don't want to disparage Jussie Smollett, but let me just say that narrative about I was on his side and that I was trying to cover it, that's all bullshit. And you know who didn't believe Jussie the most?
Who?
Gay black men.
Okay.
They were like, Jussie,
you making us look bad. Yeah. Well, because it undermined the actual, homophobia and violence.
Because they have to deal with hate crimes and that sort of thing.
So
and they were mad, but no one. I mean, I could call friends now, and they're like, look, we didn't believe him, and I didn't. I'm sorry, but I hate that that's out there because people capitalize on that and they think it's like some reason that I had issues with my job, and never did. My people were like, "Did you get the interview? Can you get the interview? Are you going to get him on the show?" I'm like, "I've been texting him, trying to get him. So far, he's not coming on the show."
Yeah,
but yeah.
The George Floyd thing happened, and Dave Chappelle had the 846 special, and he mentioned you.
Yeah.
During that special, and you actually responded to him.
Yeah.
What was your take on that?
Well, I mean, look, first of all, as I said, Dave Chappelle is talking about you. I have never been cooler with my younger, nieces and the younger folks. I'm not afraid of criticism. And I don't think he understood what I was saying. He said, because I said something about, go out on the street, come on, get out of your mansions and go help these young people. And I didn't mean that like people should be taken to the streets, like figuratively. I didn't mean it like bigger. I meant like help. Why aren't you doing a show about it? Why aren't you speaking up about it? Why aren't you trying to help with, talking to lawmakers about it? Like you have a lot of power and influence, and so far I don't see anything. I mean, I did preface it and I say, but maybe you guys are working on something and you're doing something now that I don't know about, and I'm speaking out of school. So maybe that is. But I have to say, sitting here in this moment, help those young people because they're trying to change the country and they're trying to do good things. And that's all I said. And, I think he said they don't need whatever, blah, 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 blah. I think you always need help from as much people as possible. But I wasn't upset at Dave for doing it. I saw Dave at the convention. We had a big hug. We talked. He's like, let's hang out and come on the show. And I said, we need to talk about some things, some issues or whatever. I want to talk to him about the trans things. I don't mean that in a negative way. Mm-hmm. I just want to get to know him and figure out, what's in his head. Flame Monroe, who is a trans comedian, is a friend. Flame thinks that Dave is like the best guy in the world. So I want to see if I can get to know that guy.
Well, Chris Cuomo got into a whole situation at CNN. And he kind of threw you under the bus.
He did?
Would you say that?
I don't know. What do you mean?
Well, Chris was trying to get $125 million. And in the filing, he claimed that CNN overlooked your transgressions as long as the ratings were good. And he also brought up the whole Jussie Smollett situation. They say that you reportedly said that he shouldn't receive a severance before he was fired. Is this accurate, or am I all over the place?
No, why would they be talking to me about Chris and his severance?
I'm not sure.
It has nothing to do with me.
I'm not sure, but this was reported.
That's completely false. Don't believe everything you read.
Okay.
And I would never say that, because I don't care who it is. I want people to be able to feed their family. Why would I say he should never get a severance? Never. I would never
so this
say
is
that.
false.
That's false.
Okay, fair enough. It was on the Daily Beast was the one that reported on this. All right.
Consider this.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Nikki Haley, the whole situation that happened with her. So she called for mandatory mental competency tests for politicians over 75 years old. And you said, this whole talk about age makes me feel uncomfortable. I think it is wrong. It is the wrong road to go down. She says, people, politicians or something are not in their prime. Well, Nikki Haley is in her prime. Sorry, a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s. And people had a field day.
But go on and read the next thing. What did I say?
I don't have the next part.
Okay, the next part says, I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm not saying that. That's what society believes. I didn't say the society part. I said, I'm not saying that I believe that or something like that, or I don't believe that. But what I was saying is that's what society considers, not me. But no one writes, no one uses the next line when I say that.
Right, but it became a big thing.
Yeah, became a big thing.
Michelle Yeoh, when she had her Oscar acceptance speech, she mentioned it, that whole situation.
Did she?
Yeah. She won Best Actress. She took a swipe at you. What did she say? During her acceptance speech, she said, dreams do come true, and ladies, don't let anybody tell you you're ever past your prime. And everyone cheered.
But what did that have to do with me?
It seemed like it was a response. No? You don't think so?
No, not at all. I don't think it's, and I think...
TMZ said that.
Yeah, well... Again, I think people are looking for a correlation but no, I did not look at it that way.
Variety magazine did a whole report claiming that you're a misogynist, and they brought up all these kind of different situations. They mentioned Soledad O'Brien, Kyra Phillips, Nancy Grace, going back to 2008, et cetera, et cetera. This was like a cancel culture moment for you. Would you say that's true?
Well, I think it was someone who was doing their best to try to cancel me.
Right. I've gone through my own cancel cycle, so I can relate.
Yeah.
I can relate. But you did respond to this in your book.
I did.
Yes. And you said, I didn't say that all women are not in their prime. I said Nikki Haley is not in her prime, and Nikki Haley is not all women. She's an arch conservative whose obsolete views on race, gender, climate change, and reproductive rights are long past their expiration date.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! That's a pretty strong clapback right there.
Right. Yeah. Yes, and it's true. But I try to explain this so people can understand it. When you were talking about having a mental competency test for people of a certain age, I immediately thought of poll taxes. I immediately thought of older people who are, just killing it, like my friend Clive Davis, who's in his 90s, or I watched Nancy Pelosi, and she's in her 80s. My mom is 82. And there's nothing about them that says that they need a mental competency test. So I was trying to stand up for, I thought she was being ageist, and I was standing up for older people. And I was surprised that as a woman who society has discriminated against, I was shocked that she would try to do the same thing to older people. That was surprising, and I felt that she should know better. And she didn't mention at all Donald Trump was also aged as well.
A few months later, you end up getting fired from CNN.
Yeah. But you didn't, the whole Variety thing, no one writes that CNN said that there was no evidence that any of this happened.
Right.
None of it happened.
Put that out there then.
But there's they said, we cannot corroborate that. It could have been a stronger response from them, but there was no evidence that any of it happened, but someone wrote about it and everybody believes about it, and none of it was true. There was absolutely zero evidence to anything in that article.
But you did get fired a few months later.
Yes.
From CNN. Well, and your contract would have expired in 2026.
Right.
and this was 2023.
Right.
So 3 years left. How much of a shock was this firing?
It wasn't. It was a shock, but also a relief.
How so?
Because it wasn't the same place that I had worked with, and I felt that I had been caught up just sort of in a maelstrom of, different positioning and companies, and owning and trying to change the direction of the network, and so ultimately I realized that it was good timing when it happened.
But you did say you went through a depression afterwards.
I did.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? A lot of it was because of how publicly it played out. Most people, you lose your job, and that's, only the people who you work with or your spouse or your friend, and then you go on to find something else. This played out very publicly, and then I felt that there was this orchestration of trying to ruin my reputation and to sully my credibility, to ruin my credibility and sully my reputation. I think that there was a concerted effort among certain members of the media.
Well, Tucker Carlson got fired on the same day also. So It was a big shakeup in media that day. Now, was there a lawsuit over that firing?
Over Tucker Carlson's
No,
firing?
over your firing.
No, there's no lawsuit.
Okay, so was there a big payout after they fired you?
I'm doing okay.
You're doing okay.
I'm doing okay.
I remember I interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
And he said he was glad that you got fired because you guys had the back and forth.
How nice is that for someone to say that? I don't care who you are. I'm never.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that.
That says a lot about his character and who he is. But by the way, technically, I did not get fired. I'm still under contract with CNN.
Oh, really?
But when you have a contract, it's called pay or play. You either play someone or you pay them.
Okay, so you're basically getting paid to do nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Shout out to my man Gilbert Arenas.
That's what happens. That is common knowledge among all contracts like that.
Yeah. And listen, I think Vivek would admit that he's a fairly petty guy,
I don't know him. I just
I've
think that,
interviewed him, well, so did you, of course.
Yeah.
He was nice with me, but
yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
So, after you leave CNN, you announced that you're going to have a new show on Twitter, The Don Lemon Show.
Yeah, not a new show on Twitter. That I'd have a new show, and Twitter would be I'd have a content deal with Twitter, and I'd have a distribution deal. But my show was my show, whether I was with Twitter or not.
Oh, okay, so that was just one of the platforms.
One of the platforms,
right? Because it was also on what also is on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It's on iHeartRadio. Right. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple. And it was always intended to be on any place you get your streaming. I just had for Twitter, I had to give them some exclusive content. So if I released a video, some of them, not all of it, just maybe 2 or 3 a month or something, it had to go to them exclusively for 24 hours, and then it would go everywhere else. That's it.
Well, there was rumors about your deal with Twitter.
Yeah.
That you wanted a $5 million advance, a Tesla Cybertruck, equity in Twitter, and the right to approve any changes in Twitter's policy as it relates to news content. And your agent said it was all BS.
Yeah, but what if I did? And when you negotiate contracts, what do? You ask for what?
As much as you can. Was any of this true?
I don't talk contract negotiations or money.
Okay.
But what I will say is that it has been embellished. And but again, I am in litigation with Elon Musk and with Twitter, and I can't really talk about it.
Okay, but you did have an interview with Elon Musk.
Yes.
That's public.
Yeah.
It was supposed to run on Twitter, or X as they call it now, but ultimately you didn't, and you just posted it on your YouTube channel.
What do you mean?
Did that interview actually run on Twitter as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because before it aired, Elon canceled the deal.
He canceled the content deal.
The content deal.
Yeah. So I no longer had to provide them exclusive.
And you put it out on YouTube instead.
No, I put it
it was on Twitter as well.
I put it everywhere.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I watched that interview this morning. As someone who does interviews for a living, I didn't really see a problem with your questioning. I'll be honest. This is what I do. We do the same thing. Yes, there were some tough questions, in terms of racist content on Twitter and the effects of it and so forth. But Elon seemed very defensive really throughout the interview. Why do you think that was? Because it seemed like you were a little surprised as well.
As I said, I am in active litigation with Elon Musk and Twitter, and so I can't really talk about it. But
okay.
I think it was unfair the way that I was treated, and it wasn't necessary. And I'm glad that you're an interviewer and you understand.
I do understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have probably gone the same route.
And what did you think when you saw it? Why do you think he reacted the way he did?
I mean, I think that Elon is used to controlling the narrative. And I think he was put in a place where you weren't allowing him to just control the narrative and go to the next question. You kept going back to your original points because I don't think he was really answering your questions. That's my professional point of view. And you're in active litigation, so you can't comment on it. But that is my professional point of view as someone who does this for a living and has made my career off of it.
I'll just say I'm a journalist.
There you go. There you go. Now, you end up marrying your longtime partner, Tim Malone.
Yeah.
Do you guys plan on having kids?
Yeah. I better get at it, right? He's going to have to do it because my body won't bounce back. I'm too old.
You can't carry the twins?
No, we have to do it soon, though, because then I'll be, going to their graduation with a walker. I definitely won't be in my prime.
But you're going to do it?
I think so. We're discussing it, but yes, we are discussing it.
Kids are great, man. You should do it.
They're great, but they're also a lifetime commitment.
They are, but they're also great.
Yeah. I love kids.
Yeah.
Other people's kids. I do love kids, though. We'll see.
You're going to love your kids a little more.
We'll see. There are certain things that I like to keep private.
Fair enough.
So, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Candace Owens called you sinful for having a gay marriage. She was also recently suspended from YouTube over her interview with Kanye. What is your take when someone like a Candace Owens criticizes your lifestyle?
I mean, honestly, I don't really care. And I interviewed Candace Owens because I wanted to interview Candace Owens, and I wanted to see, who she was and have my audience and folks get to know her. And I actually told her I was happy that she came on the show. There are things that Candace Owens says that I agree with, and there's much that I don't agree with. So when she said that I think she said I'm living in sin or I'm sinful or whatever it is that she said, but that wasn't shocking to me. And sometimes you just let people talk, right? And so that they can show you who they are. And I think that that's what happened during that interview.
Yeah, I don't think I would interview Candace Owens. I just think some of the stuff she said is just so nasty, about Black people, Jewish people, and so forth.
I understand that, but for me, there was a reason for me to interview her. And the reason was that she had been fired from the Daily Wire,
right?
Which was Ben Shapiro's platform. So I wanted to know sort of what happened with that. And, look, she's a Black woman who has a big voice and, in streaming, which is where I think everyone is going to have to end up. That's where we're all going.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to hear from her to see what that was like. And, the interview kind of turned into something that I didn't, the interview kind of turned into something that I didn't expect it to, but that's all fine. And I encourage people to watch it because I don't believe that you have to agree with everything that, the person you're interviewing believes. That you don't have to agree with everything from the person you're interviewing. Yeah.
Well, the assassination attempt happened with Trump.
Yeah.
And Melania made a video about it.
Yeah.
And you kind of mocked the video a little bit.
I did not mock the video.
No?
I did not put that video out. And when I learned that it was out there, I immediately had it removed.
So what exactly happened? I'm a little confused. So was this like a fake video that was circulating? Or?
No, it wasn't a fake video that was circulating. Someone, a member of my team, put that video out, and I said, "This should not be out there. Why did you do it?" I didn't even know about it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Take it down. I said, take it down. It's callous."
I mean, what's your take on what's been happening? I mean, he had the actual assassination attempt where he got shot in the ear. And then they found another guy on his golf course with a gun. Which
was an attempt at an attempted assassination.
Yeah, it was an attempted assassination. Does it surprise you?
What?
That this is happening with Trump?
Listen, I don't. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't want anybody to shoot or harm Donald Trump or any presidential candidate or anyone, for that matter. Is it surprising? No, I'm a journalist. I mean, I was in high school when Reagan was shot, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember when Ford was shot at. I remember when there were assassination attempts on Bill Clinton's life and they closed down Pennsylvania Avenue. I remember when they put Barack Obama behind glass because he was the first black president. They said, we've never dealt with this situation before. So am I surprised by that someone attempted to do it? No, and I think it's awful that they did. But what I'm more surprised about is that we don't have better gun laws. And I'm surprised at this day and age that we are letting people who should not have access to guns have access. And that's where our focus needs to be. Because if this person who has obviously a deranged mind did not have access to a gun, then we wouldn't be in the situation and I wouldn't be talking about a former president and an attempted assassination.
Have you endorsed the candidate in this election?
I haven't endorsed, I'm not going to go out and say I support this person, but if you ask me who I'm going to vote for, who I'm supporting.
Yes. Who are you voting for?
I'm voting for democracy.
And that means?
That means I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Yeah, because I believe in democracy. And it's not because I'm a Democrat. It's not because Kamala Harris is a Democrat, although I think she is highly qualified, and I think that she'd be a fantastic president. I'm voting for democracy.
When you hear the critics, Kamala's not really black. She locked up 1,500 black men for marijuana charges.
That's not true.
Not true. Exactly. She locked up 55 people.
Right.
Some of which I'm sure are black, some of which are not.
As I said, know who you're voting for and why you're voting for them, and that's why I do what I do. I'm sorry, go on.
Right. So you're voting for Kamala Harris, and I think that she's a great candidate as well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when I talk to some of my friends, I hear, well, I don't think that America is ready for a black female president. And I feel that's nonsense. I feel that when the right candidate comes along, it doesn't really matter what that person is. Was America ready for the first black president when Obama came along? No. Mm-hmm. America, I think, was more racist back then, but the right person came along, he killed it, and then he swept it on a second term as well. Would you agree with me on this or no?
What do I think? I've never even thought about I haven't thought a second about a woman running the country. I actually think a woman can run the country better than a man. If you want to get shit done, you know what? You hire a woman. And I came from a family of women, and my mom got shit done. My mom was a breadwinner in the family. She came home every night. She cooked dinner. She did it in high heels. She looked good. She raised 3 kids, 4 once she was remarried. And she was a professional, retired, I think, in 2012, ran, the section of the company that she was in charge of, and did it with ease, without without breaking a sweat. And and there have been lots of unqualified men, especially white men in society, who have fucked up the presidency and other jobs. And so, you know what? Let a woman have it. And by the way, I think the most qualified person to have run for president in recent history have been 2 women. One of them was Hillary Clinton, and the other one is Kamala Harris.
I wouldn't disagree with you on this in terms of their qualifications, but I just remember during the election with Hillary against Trump, I think there was a general feeling of antipathy when it came to Hillary.
Yeah.
And there was an actual excitement over Trump with his supporters. And I think that's ultimately what happened. I think that the Trump supporters came out in droves, brought all their friends. people were sort of lukewarm on Hillary, and probably a lot of them didn't vote. Otherwise, she would have won.
But I think there was also, I mean, listen, it goes deeper than that. I understand, yes, he got the most people out, but also there was, look, if we talk about, Russian influence, there was a disinformation campaign about
There was a lot going on, yeah.
And there was also a lot of misogyny when it comes to Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of sexism when it comes to, Hillary Clinton and any woman. I would hear people all the time saying, I just don't think a woman can run the country. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Of course a woman can run the country. And perhaps if women had been running the country, maybe we'd be better off right now.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
I know that I'm right. Who runs the household?
Women. Yeah, there you have it. Reparations. You said we finally have the technology to solve the complex problem of reparations, and doing it by the numbers would force us to embrace a history based on irrefutable facts. Mm-hmm. I agree on reparations as well. You've seen it happen lots of other times with other groups. But do you think you'll see reparations for Black Americans in your lifetime?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And I didn't used to think, look, I didn't think I'd see a Black president, right?
Right.
I didn't think I'd see a woman president. I didn't think I'd see, a con man become president. Seriously, I'm sure that people who lived before didn't think there'd ever be a man on the moon, or we'd ever get to space, or, there'd ever be a rover on Mars, or all of those things that happen. I didn't think that there would, ever one day be a pill that would keep people from getting HIV and AIDS. But here we are, right?
Here we are,
the world
yeah.
keeps moving and it progresses. So right now we're at the forefront of this whole artificial intelligence, this AI thing. So all you got to do is feed AI into the system, feed it into the AI system, and I think it can figure out, where the money came from, the number of people who, worked as slaves and all those things. What big company reaped the benefits from slave labor, just like they do in a lawsuit. And you get compensation, pain and suffering. We're at a place now where the technology can figure it out. And so I think one day that artificial intelligence, or whatever it is that you want to call it, will be able to figure out how you give reparations to Black people, to descendants of slaves.
Yeah, and I remember in your book, you talked about how in the 1800s, the Bible was pushed on slaves, but it wasn't the Bible. It was
a slave Bible.
It was a slave Bible, which is about
left out
10% of the actual Bible.
Yeah.
So all the stuff about slave revolts and everyone being created equal, that was all taken out.
Right.
And they had a special condensed version with just the information they wanted to push onto Black people. And I never knew that before.
Yeah. And then came Manifest Destiny.
Yes.
Which basically gave Christians, white male Christians in this country, dominion over all of America. Mm-hmm. Just because the Lord said so. So, yeah. So do I think, yes, I think it's time. And I think people are getting, so how do you know? I didn't do it, my grandfather. Yeah, but you've reaped the rewards and you reap the benefits of it.
I agree. I'm Jewish. I've been all through Israel, and I've seen what German reparations did in that country.
Right.
Like there's buildings, all the taxis are Mercedes. Like it was an actual concerted effort that actually built that country off of German reparations because of what they did. So I would be a hypocrite to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about cancel culture in your book.
Yeah.
You said cancel culture started out as a good thing, amplifying voices that have been silenced for far too long. We saw the power of the people on a granular level. The Me Too movement was long overdue, but in its wake, there was inevitable backlash. Heightened sensitivity morphed into what I call predatory listening.
Yeah.
Finely tuned talent for sniffing out transgression. The outrage industry is good at rooting out unconscious bias, and that's not a bad thing unless there's no room for accuracy or nuance. Without some level of discernment, it's like a touchy smoke alarm. It doesn't care if you burn the toast or a meth lab or set a meth lab on fire. It's going to make the same ear-splitting racket. Mm-hmm. You said in the clickbait economy, anyone, not just celebrities or politicians, might be one ambient tweet away from the free fall where viral takes on its original meaning: pathological, toxic, and dangerous. Cancel culture is a very weird thing, and it's something relatively new for people of our age. Mm-hmm. Before a few years ago, if the news didn't report it on a national level, you could get away with damn near anything. Now you're right. One tweet could go mega viral. And I've had these types of tweets, and I've had both positive and negative effects from these tweets. What is your take on cancel culture?
Well, I believe it started as consequence culture.
Consequence culture. Okay.
It was the consequences for people who exhibited bad behavior. And I thought it was a way to sort of correct the ills of society. But then it became too much. It became, cancel culture. And I also write about DEI. And I said all those things are good unless it becomes a religion, right? And people start, worshiping, the folks who are carrying it out. And America is about redemption. It should be about redemption. We were just talking about reparations. So it's about redemption and restoration. And it shouldn't be about canceling people for something that they did 50 years ago or what have you. That should not, I don't believe that should happen generally. And I think, obviously, it's a case-by-case basis, right? If you are, someone who, 50 years ago, or however many years ago, helped with the Holocaust, yes, you should face consequences. But I think generally, people should not be going back into people's pasts trying to find things. I do think that it has silenced a lot of very needed voices, like Al Franken. Like, did the Democrats have to get rid of Al Franken? No, it was a mistake. And all those people who were like, oh, Al Franken has to go. It's like, why are you doing it? Why are you eating your own over something that is minor, right? Or over something that, that people can get over it, right? And I think that happens a lot from Democrats. Democrats eat their own. Republicans stand by their people. Look at all the shit that Donald Trump says. He should have been canceled at least 500, if not 1,000 times.
Yeah, D.L. Hughley, he spoke about that in our last interview. He said from his point of view, he doesn't think that Republicans really love Donald Trump. They think he's a useful idiot.
Yeah. They think he speaks for them. He's like a Trojan horse. They get their policies and what they believe across because, right, he's the thing that goes in and does it when they're like, they're hiding behind him.
Look at, for example, what's happening now. You have the Diddy situation.
Yeah. But look at what happens to people. You have the Diddy situation, but look at what happens to people. And I'm not condoning, a power imbalance when people take advantage of that. Most people meet at work, right? And so how do you sort of govern that when people have romantic relationships? People are at work a lot. They used to be in offices a lot more now. Mm-hmm. They would develop romantic relationships. They would get married or whatever. And so where do you draw the line? What is a Me Too moment, right? A power imbalance if someone is pushing yourself over, fine. But if someone asks you out at work, mm-hmm. right, and you go and say, oh, I felt uncomfortable because Vlad asked me out. That's not a Me Too.
No, you could say no.
But if you continue to do it.
If I ask you out 30 more times, then it's a problem.
That's a problem.
Right.
But the first time you say, no, I'm not interested, and you move on, that's not, I don't consider that a Me Too moment.
Here's the thing, though. Like, I'm trying to remember who said this. But back in the day, if you were a celebrity, you had certain level of advantages. Mm-hmm. People would cover up your indiscretions and so forth. In 2024, I feel there's an opposite effect. If you're a celebrity on any level, everything gets amplified and put under a microscope.
That's true.
So, for example.
But, go on.
Well, and look, and I'm not justifying the actions. I'm just trying to prove an overall point. Law enforcement, especially these days, is extremely reactive as opposed to proactive. R. Kelly, I don't think would be in prison and sentenced to 30 years if Surviving R. Kelly never came out.
I don't know if I believe that.
He beat his criminal case back in the day, and he was living his life doing whatever. That documentary put a huge microscope over him, and suddenly he was charged with a bunch of crimes. I think with the Diddy situation, if it wasn't for the Cassie lawsuit going public, I don't think there'd be a federal indictment to go along with it. If you look at the timing of it, it is what it is. Same thing with Bill Cosby. A lot of this stuff happened 50 years ago, 40 years ago. The lawsuits were literally civil lawsuits. They weren't criminal lawsuits that turned into criminal indictments and so forth. Am I saying these weren't bad people and did bad things? I'm not saying that. I think a lot of them did do bad things. But if you bring me a woman, and I'm 51 years old, and she said that in 1989, Vlad did something to me, I may not even know who this woman is. There's no proof behind it. I have no idea. And suddenly I am painted a certain type of way because someone makes an accusation that didn't have a police report during that time, may not even have met me in real life. You see what I'm saying? And this is where I have a problem with.
Okay, all right. So listen, I'm not going to sit here and make an excuse for Diddy or R. Kelly or Bill Cosby or whatever. Bad behavior is bad behavior, and
yes,
people deserve to suffer the consequences if they have done it. Yes, I think that it is, when you're a celebrity, when you're a celebrity, that there's obviously more press around it and people are more aware of it. But you also have a responsibility to know that you have influence over people that most people do not have, that people react to you in a certain way. And so you have to be aware of that. That's why I call it consequence culture. Just because you have the ability to be able to, influence people and sometimes unduly influence people, you should be aware of that. And I think that the Me Too movement has made people more aware of that and more aware not to abuse their power.
Right.
So not to abuse it, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that does happen, and I think people have, obviously taken the opportunity to capitalize on certain things. But I think that happens few and far between.
But when it does happen,
But when it does happen to you, it is huge and it's awful. And I write about that. I do write about that in my book, and I talk about getting rid of people for who that you should not have been for unfair reasons. I do talk about that.
Right, because you had a situation with someone named Dustin Heiss who tried to sue you for $1.5 million for sexual harassment, but ultimately he was fined $77,000 for trying to bribe witnesses.
That's why you have to trust the process.
And of course, the case was dropped.
That's why you have to trust the process.
But you still had to be dragged in the media. You had to spend money on legal bills. And the problem is that when someone sues you, and I've gone through this, people sue you, they get a lawyer on contingency. It costs them nothing. You end up spending $50,000, $100,000 to defend yourself.
That's it. You're lucky.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm sure that Diddy's bills or whoever's.
I spent $75,000 defending myself against a lawsuit. And ultimately, you go and countersue the person, but you realize you'll never make the money back because there's nothing to take from. The person's has a 9-to-5 job, and if you win a $200,000 judgment, you'll never get it. So it's annoying being in a position that you and I are in because we're targets, but there's no equality in these situations.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. But let me just say, even with all of that, because of the privilege that I have, I understand that sometimes those things, unfortunately, go along with the territory. And would I want to be in a situation for someone who is not of means, and who's not getting sued because there's nothing there, or would I still want to be in the position that I'm in, where I have the means to be able to fight back? The system is not perfect. There's room for improvement, but I am not going to sit here and make an excuse for anybody who abuses their power. And sometimes, unfortunately, you or I or anybody gets caught up. People are out to make a quick buck, but usually those are the people who they're out to make a quick buck from can afford to be able to fight those nuisance lawsuits. And so until they correct it, I'm not going to push back against a movement that has done more good than harm.
And we've talked about this before the interview. I asked you if you were surprised that Diddy got no bail, and you said you weren't.
No.
do you expect him to be convicted and get a long sentence?
Look, I say innocent until proven guilty.
True.
And that's tough to do when you see that video.
Oh, the abuse
because
video?
What they're alleging in the video in the hotel room, what they're alleging in the indictment is there's actually proof of it from a videotape from a hotel of hitting her, dragging her, kicking her, basically pulling her back into the room, which is what? He's holding her hostage.
Kidnapping, essentially.
He's kidnapping. So there is some proof of some of the things. So do I expect him to be convicted on some of it? I do expect him to be convicted on some of it. But again, that's that's a whole legal thing.
Yeah.
So was I surprised that he didn't? No, and I think it's because of the enormity of the charges. I think this is a little bit different even than R. Kelly.
And Harvey Weinstein.
I think it's even a little bit different than Harvey Weinstein. I mean, I think Harvey Weinstein is accused of abusing his power and coercing women into having sex. This is, drug charges, interstate prostitution, or, all of that stuff is alleged in the indictment. These are RICO charges. This is what you charge mob bosses with. And so, look, do I know if it's true or not, if it's going to hold up in court? But it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, look, I've interviewed...
So I'm not surprised that he didn't get bail.
Like, I've interviewed Roger Bonds, who was head of security for 10 years, and he, in the interview, laid out the actual abuse against women that he saw. Multiple situations with Cassie. He was in the vicinity when Puffy broke Kim Porter's nose and flew in a plastic surgeon. He would see male prostitutes go up into their rooms and, he would be let off for the weekend. I spoke to someone today that said that the Kid Cudi's car getting firebombed was absolutely true. He told me how they were sitting around talking about it when it actually happened. They were actually out of town when it happened. So the level of insanity around what Diddy was doing is a bit crazy.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly. Sure.
I'm just saying that for not that I don't believe. I'm just saying allegedly, so that you don't get sued.
Right, because he hasn't been convicted of anything.
Right.
So all this is alleged, and maybe it was all lies, and he's going to walk away free and drop the album of the century.
I didn't say any of that. All you have to do, Vlad, is just say allegedly.
Allegedly. Well, you know this better than I do. You've been doing it at higher levels.
Yeah. According to the indictment.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is a fairly crazy situation, but you're seeing a lot of cases these days, like for example the Young Thug, RICO
down in
case,
Georgia,
which is now the longest running criminal case in Georgia history. It's at about 20 months right now, and it's nowhere near being done. It's going to go into 2025. So you're seeing these cases that I just feel like these cases are getting bigger and bigger and more far-reaching. And we talk about things like RICO, which is very gray area and fuzzy. You see what I'm saying? When it comes to a RICO, you don't have to be doing the actual crime. You just have to be the ringleader, or someone has to allegedly be working for you under your command. Sex trafficking is also a very fuzzy subject. A lot of girls will fly out to go see guys and have sex with them. Are they sex trafficking, or are they having sex with a guy?
Look, I don't know nothing about it. There are no girls flying out to have sex with me. That's all I have to say, or guys. So
you've never flown a guy out?
No.
You've never established a relationship with a guy and then flown him out to go spend the weekend with you?
I fly my husband. I was like, hey, I've been...
I'm talking about before your husband.
No.
When you were out there doing your thing.
No.
Really?
No.
Okay, I believe you.
No, get on a plane, get there yourself.
I don't know. Maybe gay relationships are a little different than,
Yeah, but how is that? That's not sex trafficking. I don't think that's sex trafficking. Look, I don't know the law, but I mean, if you say, hey, baby, I want to come see me for the weekend and we can go...
I'm going to fly you out.
We're going to... Okay.
But you also have, with male-female relationships, you have...
But that's are you flying out hookers? I mean, if you're flying out hookers, that's a different thing. If you're flying out someone you're in a romantic relationship with, that's a whole nother show. And I think the law can tell the difference with that.
Do you fly out a woman and you give her some money afterwards? Is she a hooker, or are you just being generous with her?
Come on, Vlad.
No, I'm serious. It's very, listen, especially in entertainment, especially in hip hop, let me tell you, this is a lot more commonplace and the lines are a lot more blurred. This is all I'm saying.
I'll let you have that one. Because that ain't happening.
Well,
that ain't happening. But here's the thing, though. So I say, for me, it's the oldest profession in the world. I have no judgment for 2 or 3 or 4 consenting adults.
Yeah.
Doing what they want to do. As long as everybody's consenting, it ain't my business. And it should not be the government's business if everybody is consenting. So, hey, for me, I know this is going to shock people. Maybe we should, how we decriminalize and we, control drugs or whatever that they do. I think maybe they should, start doing it with other things.
I've always thought that prostitution should be legal at the end of the day, and regulated on top of it.
Well, that's what I meant. I should say regulated.
And you see that in like Nevada, you see it in places like Amsterdam and so forth, where like not only is it regulated, but the women or the men are also tested. So they're not spreading disease unknowingly and stuff like that. There's also tax, there's also security, and so forth, where you basically take out the pimp and the people that are actually like really trafficking women and so forth.
But isn't that what what's that ranch called?
The bunny ranch?
Isn't that kind of what that's about, or no?
That's where, what's his name, got caught up? Lamar Odom, right?
Yeah, but so I don't know about...
But they have that. I mean, they have that, but it's only like in a outskirt of Nevada somewhere.
I think it would help a lot of people if there was some regulation to it.
Exactly.
I do.
There you go.
I have
we're on the same page.
I have no judgment about people consenting adults doing what they want to do. And of age. Adults.
And of age, of course.
Adults.
Absolutely. In your book, you said, according to a recent Gallup poll and large-scale surveys, the Christian majority, which hovered around 90% of the population 50 years ago, had fallen to about 64% in 2021, is on track to drop below 35% the next decade. Meanwhile, there's rapid growth among those who check the none box. More than 36% of young people identify as either atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. I, meaning you, would automatically tick the Christian box on such a survey, but I find more kindred spirits among the nuns. So as someone...
Oh, no, N-O-N-E, not N-U-N.
Yeah, N-O-N-E-S, nuns, meaning that no religious affiliation.
I know the way you said it, yeah.
Nuns, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. That's actually kind of funny. You grew up Baptist.
Yeah.
In a religious family, and you talked about all the religious events that you would go through as a child. Do you feel that you still believe in God in 2024? Or do you feel like you're more agnostic, atheist? I remember when I interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson and we talked about God, he said that through all his studies, he has yet to find an intelligent orchestration of the universe. So therefore, he doesn't believe in God for those reasons. And I agree with him in that regard. But also, I didn't grow up deeply religious. I was Jewish, but my family wasn't religious. I had a bar mitzvah because my grandparents wanted to see it, and then that was pretty much it for me. Where are you right now in terms of God?
I had that same conversation with Neil. Where am I right now? Oh, you have to read the book to see if I found God. It's called My Search for God in America. I once just lost my search for God in America. Where am I? I write in, I think I write in the book, or I've written, that I have to believe, because if I don't, it would mean that I'm not going to get to see my sister again. I'm not going to get to see, that I lost her. And I'm not going to get to see my dad and my father and my grandmother. And that means, for me, that I have to. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm pushing my religion and my faith on other people because I don't wear it on my sleeve. I'm sure people are even surprised that I am a person of faith because I so rarely talk about it. So where am I? Did I find God? You'll have to read the book. And if you read the book, then you might find him too.
Great answer. Don Lemon, appreciate you coming in, man. You're someone that I've looked up to in the media space. Great book. I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. Extremely well written.
Thank you.
the control of language that you've used throughout this book is extremely impressive.
Thank you.
And wish you all the future success.
Thank you. Even though you try to get me in trouble, I know.
Yeah,
You love talking about controversial shit.
Brad TV. What do you expect? And you don't?
No, I do. I was just like, wait, this is one, like, you said this back in 74. And I'm like, why is Vlad doing this?
Yeah, well, but it was all pretty much accurate. There's a couple things that you know.
But you like to traffic in controversy.
Hey, listen.
Am I lying?
It's the media. It's the media.
Am I lying?
We all traffic in controversy.
All right.
I have yet to find a major media outlet that just talks about bunnies and rainbows every day.
You should watch my show on YouTube.
It's about bunnies and rainbows?
Yeah.
Well, because I did watch some of it. I mean, you talked about the whole Diddy situation like 2 days ago. So
Oh, which one? Did you watch the emergency broadcast? Or
that one, yeah.
Like when I was on till like midnight at night?
I watched some of it, yeah.
Who was on with the attorney, Lisa Bloom? And
there was that, but there was the whole thing where you kind of broke down the Diddy thing. I just wanted to get your take on it. So
oh, yeah. But also I did a broadcast that when the U.S. attorney came out and read the indictment. So I did that one too. But yeah, I have a lot of different content on that.
That's what it is. Don Lemon. Till next time. Peace.
Thank you.